Good morning. I'm Karen Power, and as Thomas said, I'm pleased to be here. Lori, thank you. Allison, thank you for the lovely mindful moment. I think we all need those now and then. We need that reminder just to take a breath and be present. And I hope that despite it being Monday morning, that we can do that. I know how hard it is to get out of schools, out of offices on Monday. How many are here from an education portfolio? Teacher, how many teachers do we have here? Awesome, we had a few. School leaders, district leaders, big bulk of the room for sure. Somebody who supports teachers, maybe you have a job doing something that is going to help a teacher grow, helps that classroom practice. Thank you. And healthcare, I heard we have healthcare here as well. Thanks, ladies. So anybody I missed? Another role that we need to know is in the room. All right, thanks. So this morning we are going to talk about healthier cultures, and when I was asked to come today, I wanted to think about something that tied into what we're all working on right now. There seems to be a lot more focus, and I'm going to say, certainly in my work since COVID, on getting back to some basics and perhaps rebuilding some system places that maybe seem a little bit more difficult. So that's what we're going to work on this morning. Those of you who work with me a lot know I show a lot of pictures of Addison. She's my only granddaughter, so she's in a lot of slides sometimes. I think today you're only going to get 2. But, you know, how can you not when she's got a face like that, right? And she has all those expressions. But when I think of my work, I started teaching in 1980, so for me, it's still about Addison's, right? I mean, every time I'm in a school, every time I'm working online with a school or working with a principal or trying to support district growth, for me, it's about the students. And Gail, who's speaking with you later today, we're just saying the balance for culture is being student-centered, as I heard Lori mention a few minutes ago, but at the same time, we need to take care of the adults. And so I know that for Addison, when she's in school, those adults are really going to matter. And they're going to matter that we've nurtured them, that we've built skills, that we've helped them grow, and then they can take care of her. So for me, it's about, you know, all of us thinking about what our impact is on that piece. So that's what we're going to focus on this morning. So I come from New Brunswick. I worked in the same school district my whole career, which sometimes people are like, really? You didn't move around? No, I never did. I started teaching. I was a vice principal. I was a principal at Louisville Middle School there in the bottom. That was probably my favorite job. And probably still is. I still miss being a principal, I think, some days. We had the lowest performing middle school in the province. And when I got hired, the teachers told me right away the nickname for the school was Loserville, not Louisville. So I knew we had nowhere to go but up with culture, right? There was a perception in the community that that school was awful. The perception on the teachers, with the teachers, was they worked at a terrible school. And we spent 5 years changing that culture. It was fun to work with a staff that wanted to improve the school. You know, and I give them all the credit. The kids did the work, the staff did the work, but it's not easy. School improvement work isn't easy. It doesn't matter where you start on that trajectory. You might think you're getting somewhere, and then you turn over another rock, and there's another thing you got to work on. So school improvement work just seems to go on for a long time. But it's, you know, it's culture building that we want to talk about. I have 2 daughters, Sandra and Elizabeth there. We like to have fun together. So that's, you know, I work, but I have fun too. So hopefully you'll see both sides this morning. Leading change is what we're going to talk about. So when I think about building a school culture, building a district culture, building divisional change, for me it's about the conversations. So I want you to just take a moment this morning to add to the mindful moment that we already had and think about where are some of those conversations right now that you need to change? Where are there places that you could have a greater impact by thinking about a different way to have a conversation with someone? Where are you spending your time in those dialogues? We put our time into what's important to us or what we get distracted by. And that's how I always kind of coach it with the principals I work with. You can have the best intentions, but then you can get pulled somewhere else. And so I want you to think today about if culture building is about those relationships and how we impact people and how we notice our influence on others, then where are those conversations needing to go? Where are the dialogues? Where do we need to spend more time in those relationship pieces? All those pieces come back to, it doesn't matter what role you have, you can have an impact on that culture piece. So these are sort of the 5 places that I'll put some thoughts, I guess I'll say, in conversation with you today. And I really want you to think about where you can build conditions that are different, where you can impact those conditions that actually influence culture in your system. So whatever that system is, it can be, if it's healthcare, if it's in the hospital, if it's in outreach, extramural work, if it's a teacher in a classroom, there's a culture that exists in that classroom. There's a culture that exists in that one wing of the school. There's a culture that exists in the whole system. So where do you impact those conditions? Every single person in here has an impact on that culture being more positive, more healthy, or not, and we own that. We have to own that. So what are some of those factors we can influence? How do you help relationship building? And I'm going to couch this with the next one. Gail and I were just talking about this. We know you have to be student-centered to be in education. You have got to. And I remember when I was superintendent, and I was superintendent for 10 years, and there are a lot of things that landed on my table, on my desk, that all happened because somebody didn't take care of a relationship. I'm going to say 90% of the things that I ended up dealing with were HR pieces. Somewhere along the way, we didn't take care of a relationship with a parent, with another teacher, principal, guidance counselor, outside support like health. Somewhere along the way, we dropped the ball on something. So how do we balance that piece around the adults being looked after and us saying we're student-focused? Because I think that gets in the way sometimes of all of us owning the relationship piece. For example, sometimes I'll go to schools. I work a lot in the United States. I go to a school. They have beautiful mission statements. They have beautiful, laminated posters, and in Canada too, that describe student-centeredness. We're all about kids. Every student matters. Students will excel here. So then if you dig in, and one of the things I do quite a bit are needs assessments. So we'll ask people and look at the culture pieces and see what those schools need to improve. And one of the things that we find lots of times is nothing matches up to that vision statement. So we say we're student-centered, we say we're all about students, but the culture does not reflect that. And one of the things that will bubble up is teachers will say to me, when I interview them, they're all about kids here, I don't matter. Or they say we're student-centered, but everything here is about the adults. So how do you balance that? And I think a lot of leaders struggle with that balance of making sure our decisions and our policies and our protocols reflect the student, and at the same time the adults know they're cared about. It doesn't mean that every time a teacher has a complaint or a parent has a complaint or someone from the outside comes into a school and asks for something that we change everything we're doing to give in and make them feel they were heard. But we definitely have to work on that adult piece, that wellness piece. And so I think that's a hard balance in our cultures right now, to get that adult wellness piece built in and at the same time be really focused on the students. I don't know if that's a problem for any of you, but I'm running into it as I do coaching. And then the last one is actually doing something. So when we think about changing culture, sometimes I feel like I live in Groundhog Day, because I'll go to a school and we'll talk about what we're going to do different, and I leave for a month and I go back, and guess what? We have the same conversation. I go open my notes up. I'm pretty sure a month ago we had the same conversation. Do you live in Groundhog Day, some of you sometimes? Do you feel like you do? I think it's part of our education world. We get stuck on getting to the action pieces. I don't think we get stuck on making the commitments. I don't think we get stuck on knowing what the right work is, but we do get stuck on actually following through. And I'm going to give everybody grace that I work with, and myself and all of you here. There are a lot of distractors that pull us off that commitment. It is not because we intentionally say, I'm not really going to do it. When Karen comes back, we'll just pretend we did it. That's not what's happening. But 100 things happen between, October 30th and November 30th in a building. 100 things happen between November 28th and 29th in a building, right? So the distractors cause us to lose that action piece, and without the action piece, we don't change the cultures. So let's just have a look at some of that. So if we're really striving to build healthier cultures, we know we're aiming for student success. So if you think about, I guess, the alignment piece, you cannot have a healthy culture in an education system unless it's student-centered. That's just the bottom line. That's the number one piece. And the other piece of alignment is when you have healthy cultures, you have the leading indicator of success for students. That's the number one thing we need to do to make sure we're setting up students for success. And so they go hand in hand. It's like a flip. Well, if I'm student-centered, I'm helping build a healthy culture. I'm building a healthy culture. I'm setting us up for success with kids. And so those two things kind of ride side by side. So I want to just take a minute and ask you just at your tables to take 2 minutes, and let's just talk about the word culture. What does it mean to you? And I've said it a million times already this morning. If the culture of an organization is a leading indicator of success, then how do our decisions impact that as leaders? How does your decision in a classroom on a daily basis with a student impact school culture? How does healthcare coming into the schools, how can they impact school culture? So just take a minute to talk about the word culture and wrap it around that for a couple minutes. Thank you. Starts of a conversation, but I'm aware of my time with you. Is there a table willing to share something that came up at the table around the definition of culture or what it brings to mind for you? Do we have a volunteering table? We don't. I have to make eye contact with someone, don't I?
There's an online.
Oh, there's an online participant. Excellent. This is cool. Hello, online. Come in. Hello.
Yes. So this is from Alison Hancock's. Thank you, Alison. Culture, being, knowing, doing of adults and students in classrooms and outside classrooms. The behavior when no one is looking, the language of students and adults. The alignment between students' behaviors and adult behavior.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It really is about what you tolerate, isn't it? Or what we build our expectations around. So we can build culture by having tight expectations, but then if we allow adult behaviors, student behaviors to develop that go against those tight expectations, or they're going against everything we believe in and we don't take care of that, then that becomes that piece of culture that interferes with the healthy piece. And so it is about behaviors. It's about whether or not we're taking care of that and we're really recognizing those pieces. Thank you so much for participating online. Thank you. One more comment before we go on? Something that come up at the tables? I know I cut you off pretty quick, but all right, we're good to go. Thank you. That's okay, Carlos, thanks. So in a healthy culture, it's exactly what I heard a few of you talking about, and definitely what I saw there. It is about us believing in students, right? So the first thing that you have to develop is an unwavering belief in students, and you have got to message that. So it's one thing to say, I'm, the director, I'm the teacher of this class, and I believe in every student in my class. It's another thing to practice around that. And so messaging it and showing people that that's what we do, that's how we set up our class, that's how we set up our policies, our board policies, our protocols. Everything is done around that unwavering belief that we're here for all the students. That's the number one piece in a healthy culture. And so when we're not paying attention to that, we often will assume it's developing with us, and it's not really. We can assume people know that's important. We can assume everybody's going to march to the beat we say because we said we're about kids. But we need to take care of building the culture that shows people what it looks like, helps people understand how to work that way. I think the number one thing I'm seeing the most right now is we have to help teachers have the skills, you know, and we're skipping that piece sometimes. We're assuming they have all the skills that they need. They might have the will, but if they don't have the skills, we're going to fall flat. So that wavering belief in all students is not just a nice poster we put up. It's in our actions, our messages, when we show up for things. I'm going to use Reg. I'm going to pick on Reg here from Manitoba, my friend in Frontier, for a minute. You're going to meet him later in the panel. Reg, I do leadership development work with Reg's division, and 2 Fridays a month we meet with his principals. Reg never misses those Friday mornings. It's 3 hours, 2 Fridays a month, and Reg is able to participate. Even when he's away, he'll sit in a hotel room and join us. And that message to the principals is pretty clear, right? This work around student learning that we're doing, this work around literacy instruction is really important because I'm giving up my time as well as you are. And so we message things in where we show up, we message them in how we spend our time. All those pieces start to really show that culture piece. Whoops, hitting the wrong button. The other piece I just want to talk a little bit about is that it has to be intentional. I have worked with a lot of people that hope their culture's changing. They hope because they've been hired and they work hard and they know what's best, and they're probably right, they do have all those expertise with them, that people are just going to follow them and that the culture's going to develop. And all of us in this room have to intentionally work on it. So we work on it by being transparent. And when someone points out something to us that's not working, we listen and we want to fix it. We may not be able to fix everything, but we definitely have that ability to want to understand more. We want to work hard, but we want to do it with the right work, right? So we're intentionally working on the things that are going to matter. We don't walk by something that's happening and not take care of it. I remember being in a school, this was a few years ago, walking down the hall, and there was some garbage in the hallway. And I was walking with another teacher who didn't work in that hallway. That wasn't where her classroom was. So I stopped to pick up the garbage. And she said to me, she said, they'll take care of that, the other teachers here in this hallway. They'll come along and take care of it. And it kind of hit me like that's the culture we had in that school. There was my hall, we work in silos, those are my kids, and those are your kids. And when we're developing healthy culture, it has to change to what word? It has to be our students, right? This is our system, our school. Sometimes I'll have someone say to me, the culture in this system's awful. And I'm thinking, well, okay, but you're in that culture, and you're a leader in that culture. So it isn't about pointing that finger, right? It's about we're going to try to work on that. So it's that intentional understanding that no matter where we are and what we do, we're trying to build that same belief with everybody. The toxic piece bubbles up when we have, I'm going to call it fake news a little bit. We have people who say, I believe in all the kids in my class, or I know every student can be successful, and then you get all the buts, right? If they come to school fed, if they come from a good home, if they already come in as a high achiever, we can work with those kids. I work with a lot of schools where the low achievers get very little attention because they're in a high-performing community, nice demographics, school's on fire, the school looks great, right? But if you look deeply into that evidence in the data, the low-performing kids never move. We take care of the uppers because that's where we get our attention. They go on to college, they do well, they're the athletes. Nobody asks much about the other group. So toxic cultures develop when we let that happen. We let all those excuses, and I hate using the word excuses because a lot of it's true. They don't come from the best backgrounds. They don't necessarily get fed before they come to school. They might be tired. I remember talking to one high school student, he had 3 jobs, and he came to school because he was trying to support his family. And the teachers were all over him. Like, they were so frustrated with him. And I had an opportunity to interview him as the outsider trying to do some needs assessment work. And then he explains to me, his family has no money. He's doing 3 things after school to support his family. And nobody had asked him about that, right? So we've got to consciously be aware that toxicity is going to happen if we're not taking care of all the things that kind of lead to that. So trying to help people get away from this is a mindset shift, isn't it? It's not an easy one to help others say, yes, I know all those conditions exist, and now this is what we're going to do. It's not, however, we can't, and now we're going to do this. So it's changing some of those pieces in that language again. It causes frustration, right? So sometimes it bubbles up as frustration when you see a toxic culture. There's anxiety because people don't have necessarily the right skills. And I think that's what I see a lot with teachers right now. They don't know how to do quality instruction, but they're told to. So they're told they need to do a really good job teaching reading, for example, but they're not shown how. So then they're very frustrated. And that anxiety bubbles up in many ways. Some of them stay home sick. Some of them quit. We've seen all those things happen. When there's a mismatch, I'm sorry, I'm standing right in front of you, aren't I? There's a mismatch between skill set and task. So how many times have you, as a teacher, been moved from a grade level to another grade level to teach, or content to another content, right? We do that all the time. We have to in our system, but we're causing some frustration and stress because teachers are not skilled in every single piece of that. And they might have the will, but they don't have the skill. And I think taking care of that is one of the healthiest things we can do for our cultures. And then helping people get away from the blame game. So how do we help others understand that we're not going to sit around and blame people anymore? We're going to do something different. And you know what happens? How many have been in a staff room when you could kind of see that all happening, right? Or at the water cooler or the parking lot or wherever else, probably social media now. But we see that blame piece getting worse and worse, and then the negative person finds the other negative person who finds the other negative person. And next thing you know, you've got a toxic culture. And I remember one time one principal said, Karen, the train was going off the track and I didn't realize it. And that's what happens. You don't see it necessarily, but it just starts to grow. So you have to be on top of those pieces. And it doesn't matter to me what your role is in this room. Everybody impacts that. I think there are times we wait for someone else to fix it, for sure. But we all have a role in it. The other piece I see happen quite a bit is the culture change needs are not thought about, but we change a whole lot of structural pieces. So we build a new building. We get a better timetable for a high school. We change the bus route because that makes sense. We buy new curriculum. We don't like that one, we buy another one. We buy another one. We do lots of things that structurally will cause change, and we still are not getting school improvement work happening. Why is that? What's the missing piece there? We're not doing this piece, right? So we can put all those other pieces in place, but we're still walking by the adults that are negative. We're still allowing students to be treated poorly. We're still allowing, inequities to happen. We don't necessarily take care of the pieces that are going to cause that healthy culture to happen, and we just keep adding, maybe spending money and adding other things, and nothing's really going to change long term. So the sustainability part of school improvement really comes with these culture pieces. I know a lot of you have seen this. It's very old. I think I first saw it maybe when I was doing my master's, but and I know it's hard to read right now, but it's about complex change. And so basically there are 6 things that will happen for us to all be really good change agents. So we'll have really good opportunities to explain rationale to people. We'll tell people why we're doing something. We'll show them why. We'll come back to it 100 times and explain why. We have a vision and they understand it. So they see the long-term reasons we're doing something. They understand there's an outcome. There's we're on a path for a reason, the direction's clear. Skills are built. Again, taking the time to show teachers how to do things. Showing leaders how to be leaders. We provide resources, we provide incentives, and the last one says action plans, and again, that's the one that's sometimes the hardest, right, for us to kind of stick with. So every time you take one of those things out, you cause culture shifts, or you don't get that healthy culture built, because the change factors are not going to happen. So as soon as you take rationale out, you get resistance. And I've made that mistake so many times in my career where I assumed everybody understood why we were doing something. How could they not? Like, it seemed clear to me, but that's because I had my head in it for so long, planning it and getting ready for it, right? But the rationale piece has to happen over and over and over again. How many of you have tried to implement something in your systems or in your classrooms and you noticed that it seemed like you had to kind of stop and reboot, tell people again, explain again, show again? Have you ever had to do that? What's it feel like to you when you're trying to do that as a leader? It gets frustrating because you just can, you can see it clearly because, like I said, you've probably planned it. You've had your head in it a lot. But we have to take the time to revisit that lots with everybody. And then the other one we take away is vision, right? So when we take away vision, we get a lot of confusion. So I might be thinking this is a direction, I'm the teacher in this district and this division, and this is the direction we're going. And then all of a sudden, I see some actions by the leaders that are not making sense to me. So we are going in a literacy direction, and now we're doing something else. Or we're spending time on student wellness, and then we're doing something that goes against that. So then we get that piece around confusion, and people stop. They stop believing in you and trusting you. So then that healthy culture is really going to start to fall apart. And I can go on. Anxiety comes when we don't have the skills. Again, that's that training piece. If we don't have incentives, and that's not money, that's thanking people, that's setting up a few goals that people can progress monitor. It's making sure they feel good about their work. You're noticing what they're doing. And then if you don't do that, the change is slower. And then the culture piece is harder. So we just, all these things help build that healthy culture. And when we take any of them away, we slow it down or stop it. And the action one is the one that stops it the most, right? We just start over, we start over, we start over. So I show this a lot because I feel like it drives a lot of school improvement work, and it's simple to think about. And it can help you think about, what could I do different? Because today we want you to leave with some difference, right? What can I do different? What can I tweak? What can I impact in a different way? Some of the other things that I'm going to say show up a lot is not understanding we all have a role. And I hear this, and I don't mean any disrespect to teachers who are here today, because I love all my teachers, but sometimes teachers are waiting for leaders to fix all the school culture issues. And sometimes the staff, whether it's a district division staff, are waiting for that superintendent to fix everything. Or the principals are waiting for the superintendent to fix everything. We all have a role, and I think about that healthy piece, it's not easy to shift mindsets, but one of the things we can ask of people is to take part, right? To be part of the discussion. What would make this school better? What would make our division better? I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear what you want. So one of the things that I tell teachers all the time, you build a healthy culture by not going in that staff room and complaining about everything. It's as simple as that, controlling some of what you say. in the building, and I think now social media too, right? But you own that piece. You're building culture or you're taking away from the culture. Getting rid of the emotional pieces. So, really helping everybody you work with work on evidence. Let's work from the evidence of our work. What do we know is improving? How do we know that? What's growing? How do we know that? And how do we continue to focus on problem solving rather than just picking away at things? And as leaders, you're doing that side, but then you got to do the other side too, right? You got to have healthy vision that everybody understands. That one takes a lot of repeat. People got to see that. And then you have policies that line up to that, protocols, practices. That student-centered piece, I look first when I go do needs assessments, I look at policies. I look at bus runs. That doesn't make sense. We're picking up students at 7 in the morning for a 9 o'clock start, and we wonder why they don't want to come to school. They don't have a 2-hour bus ride, but we're giving them a 2-hour bus ride because we want to save a few bucks on a bus ride. So sometimes I look at those things, right? All our pieces lining up. And then do we care about organizational health? Like, are we actually intentionally trying to make this better? And if you're not working on it and saying you're working on it, then it can cause, a lot of those toxicities to grow. So I'm just going to move on because I got the 5-minute line told here. The sign came up from Carlos, but Carlos doesn't know. I'm going to give you some conversation time instead of just questions. So we're going to give you one more time to talk to each other. But I wanted to get to this slide. I think this is the thing that I feel like I have to help people fix the most. And I have to fix the most. I'm just as guilty as everybody else of assuming that the relationships are working, that sometimes I'm not listening enough. And when we think about healthy cultures, in order to build that trust, you want to put the trust in the bank, right? So when you need it, it's there. You don't want to go say, okay, I need you to trust me today, and I've never talked to you before. Like, that's not going to do it. You have got to have the up-front conversations. You got to know people. You got to care about people. You got to take care of that respect and wellness with them. So then when you really need them to help you do a change, you need them to adopt something new, you need them to go in a different direction with you, they're okay with that. But if none of that's happening and you try to do it in a toxic culture, you're not going to improve your world. It's not going to get better for kids. And so what I'd like you to do right now is just take a minute at the table that you're at and think about one thing you could do differently when you go back to work tomorrow. One thing that you know you could do a little different, a little tweaking that might make a bit of a difference when you think about helping develop culture wherever you work. Okay, so just take a personal moment with someone and think about a next step for you, a better place. All right, I'm going to cut you off again. Anybody willing to share one thing that they are okay doing, telling us they'd like to do a little different or they'd like to tweak? I know you had great conversations, so I'd love one person to share. Get one voice in the room besides mine. No one? Oh, dear.
Oh, check.
I'm going to walk over here because you
Okay.
guys are having a great conversation.
Check.
Is there one thing that you could share with us that you would be okay telling us that you want to tweak a little bit or do different? Jonathan, can I pick on you? Do we have a mic for Jonathan? Oh, sorry, Carlos. Did you have someone there? Okay. We're going to go here and then we'll go to the online group.
Test. Nope. So one thing that we spoke about, with regards to the themes that were brought up was culture. And, it always goes back to, it's that relationality, in terms of, I think of, John C. Maxwell, or that irrefutable laws of leadership. And when you look at, it's the most impactful leaders, they sort of take that observing approach, and then, getting to know the people within the organization, and then implementing change. Rocking the boat, enough to get it to shore, but not, just getting it there, and coming in, like a bull in a china shop. And another thing too, that I was going to speak of is, we spoke about that toxic culture. You do more damage when you don't have those conversations with people and addressing those behaviors than if you don't, and if you let it go on and on and on. So it takes a really, brave leader to address those matters, especially with adults, because, sometimes it's hard to hear what you're doing wrong. But, I often find that if you do it in a way that you have a relationship with that person, it becomes almost effortless, and you just kind of put it behind you. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
So on that brave leadership note, we have somewhere there's some handouts that I had sent along. They come from a book called Leading Beyond Intention that I co-authored with Jeannie Spiller, and one of the chapters is about being courageous as a leader. So I did put some of the handouts from that chapter somewhere. I don't know if they're just online for you, but we'll make sure you get them. And one of them is about just setting your intentions around those brave conversations. So I'm just going to go here to online, and then we'll close up.
Yeah, sure. This is again from one of our online participants, Alison Hancocks. She's saying that she'll do regular monthly check-ins with staff regarding growth plans so that their professional goals are honored and part of our evidence-informed teaching and learning practice. Also, create an environment so that the staff have the time to pursue those professional goals as part of our culture.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alison.
Alisa?
Alison Hancocks.
Okay, thank you so much. So 2 things she's committing to is meeting more often with her staff so she knows what their goals are. So that's that I'm going to be accountable with you, right? So you've set up some intentional professional goals. Now I'm going to be asking you to account for that with me. We're going to actually check in. And that, accountability is a big piece of this genuine commitment that we make. So Patick Lencioni, I know a lot of you have read probably Dysfunctional Teams, some of his other books. One of the things that he says in the book, The Advantage, which is all about healthy culture, he talks about that we cannot change the system, we cannot change the organization if there is not a genuine commitment and active involvement of the person involved. So you have to be, if you're the teacher of that class, you're 100% there all the time. If you're the superintendent of the division, people know your commitment. They know you're actively involved in changing what has to be changed. You're going to have those difficult conversations. You're not going to walk by that garbage. You're going to engage yourself in helping others trust that this is the way we have to go. There is no choice. These are the best things for kids. And so I need you to come along with me, but I'm not just going to tell you to. We're going to do it in a way that makes sense. So I'm going to leave a couple minutes for questions. I was going to give you a little bit more talk time. I always over-planned, so I'm skipping through things here. It's interesting. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember Wayne Hulley. He wrote Harbors of Hope, a couple other books. He was a great Canadian educator. He passed away a few years ago. He used to come present in our district when I was superintendent. I worked a lot with him. He'd have 400 slides, and we'd all take bets on how many he'd get through. And he'd get through 3 or 5, right? Because he just told stories. He's the best storyteller, wasn't he? So I'm not a Wayne Hulley, but I'll never get through them all. I'll just say that. So I will leave a couple minutes for questions, but I want to leave you with this thought, because I think this is what matters the most, that no matter what school, what classroom, what teacher, whoever that child is, should have every opportunity at high levels of learning. They should be treated with respect, treated with fairness. Inclusivity isn't about everybody gets the same book. It's about we figure out what they need, right? And so when I think of healthy culture, that's what it's about. Addison here, she's only 15, she goes to daycare in a school. It just blows my mind. She's in a little school. They actually treat the daycare like a school. She had sports day. She doesn't have a clue why she has a Blue Jays hat on. She has no clue. But every child in that, I can tell when I go in and pick her up, every child in that building is treated with respect. I can already see that. Even though she had a Blue Jays hat on, she was still treated with respect. But she has, we just want this for them, right? We want, no matter what teacher that child get, it shouldn't matter. And I was as guilty as that as a superintendent as anybody. I would allow parents to call and say, I want this teacher for my child, and somebody at the school would magically let it happen or make it happen, right? We all get wrapped into that, but that is not the best thing we can promise people. We have to promise we're going to work at this. Every child, no matter what, is going to be allowed to work at the highest level of learning we can give them. And that's the culture you want to create. So I know I'm probably very close to being kicked off the stage here, but we have a minute for questions. Is that okay? Yeah. All right. I'll be around all day, so we can do the questions anytime. Any questions online? Thomas, do you see any there? Nope, good. Okay, awesome.
How do you get teacher buy-in?
How do you get teacher buy-in? How many seconds do I have? 0. It's trust, it's relationships. I'll be honest, there's still always outliers. Like I'm working in Texas in a big district, this is year 5. I'd like to say we have every teacher working the way we want them to work right now, but we don't. And it's still, I think some of it is skill and will. And so even though you build all the skills, they may have left that will home. There are some people that still come to school thinking it's just a job, right? So what you want is a healthy culture to take that over, though. So I just say to principals, practice before you believe. Have the tight expectations, expect people to work this way, even if we haven't moved the culture there yet. We're going to work as if we're an A school, not an F school. We're going to work as if every student who comes in here is our granddaughter. We're going to do things even if it means those outliers are there. We can't, if you wait for them to catch up, you'll never do school improvement work. But eventually, what typically will happen is they'll leave, or they'll go somewhere where it's easier, because it's hard to do school improvement work. But trust is the biggest thing. They have to trust that this is the right work, this is why we're doing the work, it's a non-negotiable. And I guess the only other thing is sometimes you gotta take other things off their plate, which in fairness, we keep adding things, but we don't take anything away. So when that happens, I don't blame a teacher for saying, my cup's full. So I think sometimes you gotta look at those pieces too. Anything else? Yes, hi, Christy. So Jeannie and I talk about vulnerability in that second book, Leading Beyond Intention, because we found, especially during COVID, that came up a lot, right? And I've had leaders say to me, Karen, I can't let them see me cry or fall apart, or, I don't want them to know I don't know something. Heaven help us if someone finds out I don't know something. We have got to get past that. We have to be professionally okay to say, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I don't know, but I'll get someone else to help you. I, courageously need to tell you I'm having a hard day today. We might want to talk about this another day. I can remember we went through a lot in our district closing a big high school. It made national news. It kind of was, they hoped it was going to be career ending for me, I guess, at the time. But we closed a high school in September and had to move 1,300 students out because the structure was falling apart. And we got an engineer's report that I couldn't leave the kids there. But it never went well with the public. The media and, just came in and kind of took that over, that we were just closing that school. They even said things like, Karen's closing Moncton High because she was a Fredericton High graduate. Really? That's why I was making that big decision to find a home for 1,300 students in the middle of the month. But I remember meeting with my office staff, so our district staff, and we were all exhausted. And I remember just standing there, and they were like, what are we doing next? What are we doing next? And I just remember saying, I have no idea. Like, we have to figure this out. We have to move 1,300 students. We can't let them in that building. But right now, standing in front of you, I don't know. And I remember thinking, that's probably not what they wanted to hear, right? They didn't probably want me to say I don't know. But I think being vulnerable that day helped, because you know what happened? We embraced it as a team. We figured out, instead of me going home trying to figure it out, they had great ideas. We pulled together. We really did the best we could with a really bad situation. So I think the vulnerability, it's not always what people think it is, that they're just going to see you fall apart. It's about being honest and courageous and just saying, this is tough. Like, it's tough to be a leader. It's tough to be a teacher. It's tough to be a healthcare worker trying to come into a school and make a difference. So I think it's just okay to be that way, Christine, but it's hard. It's harder for some people than others, for sure. All right, I ran over. I apologize. Thank you.